What's going on, guys? PlayBox, and we're back for another Dragon Ball Legends video. Now today we're going to be doing a special little video, and I believe it's a pretty interesting video. I'm going to be doing another PvP guide, and this one is going to be on how to guess your opponent's rising rushes. And before we start off, this is not 100% guarantee for guessing a rising rush. At the end of the day, it is purely RNG based, so there's really no way to 100% guess their rush. But in this video, I'm going to show you little tips and tricks that can help you improve those odds and improve your chances at guessing rising rush. So without further ado, let's hop in straight into the guide. Alright, well, the first thing I want to talk about is pretty much one of the biggest factors in when deciding what card to pick for your rising rushes. And that factor is knowing your opponent's units and their kits. So what I mean by this is there are a number of different factors that influence what cards your opponent has in their hand when initiating the rising rush. As you all know, when someone uses a rising rush, it just takes all the cards that's in their hand currently and then uses that as what your opponent can guess. For those of you who also might not know, this is the way the Dragon Ball Legends works is that when you select your team, you basically have a deck of cards. So if you click on a unit, you can see that each unit holds 2 cards. In this case, we can look at Vegito. He has 2 strike cards. If you look at someone else like maybe UI Goku, I think he has a strike and a blast card. So when you're picking your 3 units to bring into battle, you have a deck of 6 cards as well as a starting base deck of, I believe, like 2 strike, 2 blast, 1 green card, and 1 blue card, or something like that. I know you have 1 blue card, 1 green card, 1 starting. That's for sure. You have that base deck, and then you add onto it the cards held by each character, and that basically gives you a sort of ratio for what kind of cards you have in your deck. So if you focus on strike mostly, you'll have I think the max you can have is, if each of your units have 2 strike cards, you can have 9 strike. I believe it's 3 blast if we do the math correctly, and then 1 green, 1 blue. So based off of that alone, that should give you kind of an indication of what kind of cards your opponent has in his deck and what kind of cards he'll most likely have when initiating his rising rush. So based off of that strike based team, you can make the assumption that he'll mainly have strike cards in his hands when initiating the rush. There are also some units like Ella Frieza, Bunny Bulma, I believe, and I believe the Red Hercules. So if we scroll down here, if I can find here, so Ella Frieza and those 2 others I've mentioned are one of the few units that carry a blue card. So this means that instead of a strike or a blast card, they'll have an extra blue card. So they'll have 2 blue cards in their deck, so that increases their chance of drawing more blue cards. It's really tricky because it comes down to what the opponent decides to pick. They can either bait you into a blue card or just pick the blue card because they think it'll be too obvious. So, but it's always important to have that sort of information. Other examples is also like EX Whis, which is, if we find him real quick, EX Whis right here. He's also alongside, I believe, like Dabura and some other units that hold a green card. So it's kind of the same scenario. Instead of a blue card, they have a green card. That means they'll have more green cards in their deck, so they'll more likely draw more green cards. So it's always important to keep to have this type of knowledge before going into battle. Another thing I want to touch up on is the fact that some units are either strike based or range based. Every single unit, with the exception of a few, are more dominant, are more leaning towards a certain attack type. So if we go here, just randomly, I picked Super Saiyan Blue Gold. He's a range type, and his blast does more damage than his strike. It's fairly balanced here, but he's definitely a blast type. Most units in this game are all they're mainly leaning towards a certain type of damage, and your opponent might want to prioritize a certain type of damage. If, let's say he uses the rush with the Super Saiyan Blue Goku, he might want to focus more on doing as much damage as possible. So he would go with all the blast cards and maybe pick a strike card. So that could also be a type of way you can kind of guess your opponent. But again, just like the blue card situation, they might bait you into thinking that they're gonna pick a strike card and then in the end pick blast card. So it is still tricky, of course, but it's always important, like I said, to know this type of information. There are also some other cases where, like, one extreme case that I can think of is Kefla, that switches all her blast cards into strike cards on entry. So that's a really important thing to note, because if, for say, your opponent switches into Kefla and uses a rush, you know that she will not have any blast cards unless they had no cards to begin with. If they had a full, you can't know what cards they have exactly in their hand, but you know that Kefla changes her strikes into her blast into strikes. Sorry, so she'll most likely have more strikes in her hand when using the rush. So that's important to know. Even other units like Demon King Piccolo Zenkai, I believe. So Demon King Piccolo here after Zenkai. Can we look at the Zenkai stats? Whoa, how do you look? Whatever. Well, his green card, I don't know if it. Yeah, so his green card destroys all your cards, and I think they turn into strikes, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong here. I don't own the Zenkai unit, but I believe he changes into strikes or something like that. But units like these, they really manipulate the cards. Even EX Whis, his green card allows you to switch your hand completely. So being able to manipulate the cards in your hand is also really important to keep note of. And it's mainly for this point I wanted to come across is mainly for Kefla, that changes her blast into strike, so you know what card they'll most likely have in their hand. Just like units' unique ability, you should also keep into account units' main ability. Some units can draw green cards or blue cards from their main ability, such as, I believe, off the top of my head, Purple Super Saiyan Blue from Vegeta from the future. He draws a blue card on main ability. Also Shallot, he draws a blue card on his main ability also. So these type of units, they might even go for their main ability and then go for the rush. So that pretty much gives you an indication that he in fact has a blue card in his hand. But like I said, it always comes down to whether the opponent decides to pick that blue card, whether it's too obvious or not. It's definitely a mind game, but at least it gives you that information that he does in fact have that card in his hand. So it's always good to keep that in mind. So like I said, knowing the unit's kit, your opponent's unit's kit, and what basically kind of guessing what unit they're going to bring into battle, knowing all this information really improves your chances at guessing the Rising Rush. Once in the game, however, it's also important to keep track of your opponent's cards when playing. So this is especially important early on in the game. We did get a slight nerf to the Rising Rush recently in a battle version update, where you can't farm Dragon Balls as quickly as you used to be able to. The Dragon Balls will take less time to come to your hand, but people can still pretty much farm Dragon Balls in like 15 counts and use a Rising Rush. So it's really important to keep track of what cards your opponent uses in the beginning of the match, because if let's say, for example, they haven't used a blue card and since the beginning of the match and they use a Rising Rush, you have that type of information in your head that they in fact have a blue card in their hand. They might not, but there's a really high chance for them to have a blue card or a green card in their hand when they use that Rising Rush early on in the game. That's probably, I would say, the easiest way I would guess their Rising Rush is if it's early on in the game and they haven't used a blue card. That's a really easy way to guess their Rising Rush. I've been able to do it multiple times in the past, and it's really important to keep track of all that information. Another way is by basically, let's say with Vegito Blue, since he draws so many strike cards, the opponent might just decide to use 5 strike cards and then go for the rush. What this tells you is that the opponent used a bunch of strike cards, and therefore he might not have that many strike cards left in his hand, so he might go for something else. But again, he might have like 1 strike card in his hand and decide to use it in a way to bait you. All this information is good to know, but at the end of the day, it does come down to what the opponent decides to pick and what you decide to pick. So in that aspect, it is definitely RNG based. But like I mentioned at the beginning, it is always important to have this type of information in mind whenever you're going up against someone. So like I said, this is not 100% way to guess other people's Rising Rush, but it is a guide to basically increase your chances of guessing Rising Rush and basically punishing your opponent. This guy would have been more impactful a couple of months back, because after after with the new battle version, we did get another nerf with, in addition to the one I mentioned before, where you can't even combo off of a guest rush. So that means like after you guess your opponent's rush, both players are set back to neutral, and you cannot chain any other cards after that. Before, after guessing a rising rush, your opponent is pretty much left open, and you can just unleash all your cards. So this would have been even more impactful. But nowadays, just throwing your rush out and getting a guess is not as bad as it used to. But it's definitely good to at least be able to have a fighting chance when guessing their rush. So that's pretty much it for it, guys. Sort of a short video, but I just want to let you guys know about all these tips and tricks. And hopefully this improves your gameplay. So hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe, because that shit is so important, so don't forget. Other than that, have a great day. See ya.